Okay, so seeing how it's Halloween and I'm in my video store, I think it's time to find another horror movie to do a deep dive into. But this time, I don't want to explore just any horror movie, I want to look into a classic. A horror movie from long, long ago. But the question is though, which one? Me and my bald head have no idea. So I'll just keep looking around until I find something. Ah, of course! Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Truly a masterpiece if I've ever known one. After Alfred Hitchcock made everyone terrified of showers in 1960, he decided he wasn't done with making audiences scared of otherwise mundane things. So in 1963, next he set out to make everyone terrified of birds. Yep. Birds, whom attack a small town with a bloodlust to cause as much terror and destruction as possible, in his horror masterpiece, The Birds. The film focuses on San Francisco resident and prankster Melanie Daniels, played by Tippi Hedren, who tries to play a trick on pet store customer Mitch Brenner, played by Aussie actor Rod Taylor, who sees right through her prank. So determined to get the last laugh, she visits his home in Bodega Bay to leave two lovebirds at his house, where once again the two get acquainted. However, the romance is cut short when birds start attacking the town, with what starts as the odd attack here and there soon descends into madness, with the birds destroying the entire town and many of its residents, with no explanation as to why this terrible ordeal is taking place. The Birds is a creature feature monster movie, polished with the sophistication of Alfred Hitchcock's directing, making it a unique film, and a film that would go on to inspire other movies such as Jaws. So today we are going to fly into 10 things that you didn't know about The Birds, so let's check it out. Number 10, based on a short story. Alfred Hitchcock's terrifying movie about birds attacking was indeed based on a short story by English author Daphne du Maurier, which was featured in her anthology novel The Apple Tree, which was published in 1952, but would get retitled to The Birds and Other Stories. Although the story also features a bird attack like the movie, it is actually vastly different from the film, as it's not set in Bodega Bay in sunny California, but rather Cornwall in southwest England, and is set in the 1940s just after World War II, where a war veteran Nat Hockin works as a farmhand, when birds mysteriously start attacking his village, in a dive bomb kamikaze fashion, with many environmental themes and warnings to boot. The Birds is actually the third Daphne du Maurier story that Alfred Hitchcock directed, the first being the 1939 movie Jamaica Inn, followed by the 1940 movie Rebecca. However, apparently Maurier wasn't a fan of the Birds movie adaptation and the changes to her story that were made by Hitchcock. Number 9, a screwball comedy with killer birds. The early 60s was a popular time for wacky screwball comedies, many of which would also feature a romantic element thrown in for good measure. Heck, the very year The Birds came out, Jerry Lewis's The Nutty Professor also came out. This is the approach that Alfred Hitchcock wanted to take with The Birds. He wanted the movie to start off like an oddball romantic comedy, about the will they or won't they love hijinks between the Melanie Daniel and Mitchell Brenner characters. A comedy tale which eventually descends into madness and terror with an ambush of killer bloodthirsty birds. And to be honest, starting the movie off as a comedy does make the eventual horror feel more shocking. And some may argue that the premise of killer birds is ridiculous, so maybe starting off the movie as a romantic wacky comedy helped viewers to be more accepting of the strange plot. Alfred Hitchcock hired American author Evan Hunter to write the screenplay, to which he claims that Hitchcock told him to scrap the original short story of the birds entirely from the screenplay, except for the birds attacking concept, and that Hitchcock wanted to have more of a comedic element at the start of the movie. Number 8, Feathered Foes. So the big question is, how could the movie's production get wild birds to perform in the movie? Well, several techniques were used, including mechanical birds, which cost the production $200,000 to make, along with some sequences being filmed at Walt Disney Studios, where birds were being filmed flying around in front of a yellow screen and inserted onto footage of actors running around as if they were being attacked. A technique very similar to modern blue screen technology. Real birds were also used to perform on the set of the film. They were birds whom several members of the crew who were working on the movie caught and subsequently trained. Many of the gulls used for the movie were caught by a San Francisco garbage dump. And on some occasions, particularly scenes with sparrows, it was felt that there wasn't enough birds. So some were purchased from pet stores in order to make the feathered villains look like an ornithological army. Number 7. A movie with no soundtrack. Yeah, believe it or not, but The Birds has no musical score. Hitchcock's previous movie Psycho featured a wonderful and timeless score by Bernard Herrmann, but for The Birds, instead he wanted this movie to feature electronic sound effects and eerie bird noises in order to create a feeling of unease, tension, and foreboding. A lot of the electronic bird sounds and death screams were created electronically by a synthesizer, creating a unique movie experience, which doesn't feature music, but the sharp, terrifying death calls of birds. And to be honest, I'm surprised that more horror movies that followed also didn't take this approach. And incidentally, Bernard Herrmann is credited as being the Birds' sound consultant. Hey Bernard, does that sound like a bird? Yeah. Number 6. There was a made-for-TV movie about making the birds. Tippi Hedren was a new uprising star at the time when Hitchcock cast her as the Birds' main lead, and then in the following year casting her in the crime drama Marnie alongside Sean Connery. However, in 2012 there was a HBO and BBC made-for-TV movie called The Girl, which put a lot of question onto the practices of Hitchcock towards Hedren while making the Birds. It's no secret that Hedren had a tough time while making the birds, such as suffering cuts to her face from broken glass and collapsing from exhaustion. But The Girl suggests that Hitchcock was obsessed with her and was often inappropriate towards her and could often be downright mean to her. The movie is based on claims by Hedren herself, along with others who also worked on the movie. Although there are those who claim that the allegations are completely false, labeling Hedren as a fantasist. Incidentally, The Girl came out the same year as the theatrical movie Hitchcock, which was about the making of Psycho, which painted him in a much more positive light as an absent-minded but still loving husband to his wife. Yep, 2 movies in the same year painting 2 different images of the same director. Number 5. Real-life bird attack. The idea of birds randomly attacking people sounds preposterous, right? Well, actually no, as there was once an incident that was quite similar to the one seen in The Birds, as in 1961 there was a situation in Capitola in California, where birds turned on the local residents by attacking them, crashing into cars, dive-bombing into their homes, and spewing out half-digested food, most of which apparently was anchovies. Yuck. The explanation for the strange occurrence was put down to the birds eating a toxic algae, which messed up their brains and caused them to go rabid and violent. Yep, you heard correctly, they were pretty much zombie birds. The incident was even mentioned in the Birds movie, and thankfully since then, we haven't really heard of any incidents of birds going crazy and attacking people in this manner, or at least I haven't anyway. Number 4. Barbie released a Birds doll. 2008 marked the 45th anniversary of the Birds, and what better way to celebrate than, with a Barbie doll? Okay, well this makes a change from my usual action figures I cover on this show. Yep, Mattel released the special Birds edition Barbie, with the doll being modelled after the Melanie Daniels character, complete with pesky birds to attack your doll with. Yeah, Ken, good luck going on a date with this Barbie, you'll be having to put up with angry birds. To be fair, the doll does look like Tippi Hedren, and the backdrop is a nice touch, so I can understand this being of interest to collectors, because Lord knows nothing screams Barbie more than someone having their eyes pecked out by psychotic birds. Number 3, there was a sequel. Yeah, believe it or not, but there was actually a sequel to The Birds called The Birds 2: Land's End, which was a made-for-TV movie that was broadcast in 1994 and directed by Halloween 2 director Rick Rosenthal, who was so dissatisfied with the movie, his name was removed from the credits and replaced with the pseudonym Alan Smithy. And the movie stars Chelsea Field, aka Teela from the Masters of the Universe movie, along with a small role from Tippi Hedren herself, who wasn't playing Melanie Daniels, which is weird. Now, I'll admit it, I've never actually seen this movie, it's never been broadcast here in Australia, or even been made available, and most of what I know about this obscure sequel I learned from James Rolfe and his video about Birds 2. So if you're interested, definitely check out his video. But going by his insights, The Birds 2 has a cheaper made-for-TV quality, along with issues with the script, but it also has some guilty pleasure likability about it. It would be interesting if they ever did a Blu-ray or DVD release of The Birds 2 and clean up the picture and give it a HD treatment, and release it worldwide so other people like me can actually watch it. But, funny enough, I guess there just isn't that much of a demand for The Birds 2. Number 2, the cause of the bird attack may have been revealed in a 1997 autobiography. Ever since its release in 1963, The Birds has been analysed and has been the topic of discussion by movie theorists as to just why the birds attack. There are claims that it's the lovebirds that Melanie brings to the seaside town, to even claims that Melanie herself entering the town to pursue the Mitch character, which somehow upset the order and balance of things within the town's environment, to claims that maybe it was just a case that the birds didn't like Melanie's green jacket. However, the true motivation may have been revealed in a 1997 autobiography called Hitch and Me, which was written by Evan Hunter, who as mentioned wrote the movie's screenplay. He claimed that when he and Hitchcock were conceiving the story in 1961, the idea was that everyone in the town has a dark secret, and that all the townspeople are guilty of some wrongdoing, of which they keep to themselves, and that the bird attacks are an act of punishment for their wrongdoings, a wrath of nature in the form of birds punishing those who are guilty in some way or another. Personally, I find it quite scary that the birds are acting as judge, jury, and executioner in order to punish people, and it gives the birds more of a supernatural element. But that said, I do love that the movie leaves ambiguity as to why the birds attack, as it leads to great discussion and interpretation. And sometimes it's okay to not have all the answers in a movie spoon-fed to us, and for the viewer to figure things out for themselves. Number 1, cut ending. The Birds ending is as mysterious as the rest of the movie itself, with the survivors fleeing the Brenner residence in a car and driving away, with the birds appearing to be more calm than previously seen. Will the birds attack? Will our heroes escape? Who knows? The movie ends without any answers as to what's going to happen next. However, this wasn't the original intended ending. Originally, there was going to be a scene of the car driving on the Golden Gate Bridge, with the bridge being covered in birds whom also attack the car, suggesting that the bird attack isn't just in Bodega Bay, but also the city of San Francisco too. However, due to budgetary reasons, it was felt that the sequence would be too expensive to film, so this end scene was scrapped. Apparently Hitchcock abandoned the last 10 pages or so of the script, but in my opinion the ending we got was much better, and being unsure of things and not understanding what's going to happen next or why is kind of the whole theme of the movie. Once again, more ambiguity leads to more interpretation and discussion. Regardless, The Birds was released on March 28, 1963, and it would go on to make $11.4 million on a $3.3 million budget, so it was financially successful. However, sadly, its box office intake was nowhere near as much as Psycho's, which made $50 million. However, it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Special Effects, and Tippi Hedren won a Golden Globe for Best New Star of the Year. However though, The Birds actually got pretty mixed reviews upon its release. It was felt that it wasn't up to Hitchcock's usual standard of thriller pictures, as well as the ambiguity aspect being criticised, which, as mentioned, I find to be the movie's strongest aspect. The Los Angeles Times felt that The Birds comes across that Hitchcock has abhorrence for the whole human race, and for reasons unjustified, and the New Yorker flat out called The Birds a sorry failure, and that it replaces suspense with sadism. Yeah, it seems that people back then thought the movie was a bit too angry and mean-spirited. But despite its at the time naysaying, The Birds has gone on to be considered a masterpiece and one of Hitchcock's greatest achievements. Sadly, like many of his other works, it was ahead of its time, and we just had to catch up to see the true captivating wonder and spectacle of The Birds. You might think that birds are cute, but let's face it, you don't want to get on the bad side of these little feathered bastards, as they will bird you to death. On a serious note, I think that the fact that the movie is so puzzling, with little explanation, does make the movie more memorable and sticks in your mind. It's a movie that relies on you, the viewer, to fill in the gaps, which is something I actually really appreciate. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I'm off to get some bird seed and to feed the local birds, so if they ever do end up deciding to attack the town, I'll be in their good books. Yeah, see ya!